sharing my time with my colleague from Victoria.
Oh, that's great.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak to this motion today, and I want to thank my colleague, the member for Halifax in particular, for her tremendous work on this very important file and issues that we are here to address today. Mr. Speaker, today I want to talk about facts, science-based evidence rather than convenient deals. The Minister of Natural Resources suggests that people aren't as worried about climate change anymore. Well, Mr. Speaker, I and all of my New Democrat colleagues are worried. And yes, Canadians are worried about climate change. We are worried about it because we inform ourselves of facts, and reputable scientists and scientific research firms concede that 2/3 of the existing known fossil fuel reserves must remain in the ground to prevent average global warming of more than 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The 2-degree threshold is a dangerous tipping point. Beyond it, we cause irreversible damage to our planet's ecosystems. And yet, Canada's emissions continue to rise despite conservative claims. In 2011, Canada's emissions rose to 702 million tonnes, moving us even further away from our 2020 target of 607 megatons. Even worse, Environment Canada's most recent projections show our emissions will continue to go in the wrong direction without much stronger policies. Other provinces with significant climate policies in place, like Quebec and Nova Scotia, are also seeing a gradual decline in their emissions. More work is needed to build on these successes, but they are encouraging nonetheless. It works. The Commissioner for Environment and Sustainable Development reported in his fall 2010 report that although the federal government acknowledged 20 years ago that climate change would have significant long-term impacts, from severe storms to droughts, the federal government still lacks an overarching federal strategy that identifies clear, concrete action. At Doha climate change talks in December of 2012, the UN Secretary General said, "From the United States to India, from the Ukraine to Brazil, drought decimated essential global crops. Tens of millions of people endured another year of vulnerability at the mercy of the climate. No one is immune to climate change, rich or poor, east, west, north or south. It is an existential change for the whole human race, our way of life, and our plans for the future." Multi-billion-dollar disasters are becoming more common around the world. Munich, a global reinsurance company, reported that in 2011, worldwide economic losses from natural catastrophes were a record $378 billion. In the Northwest Territories, the Mackenzie River crossing ice road has seen delays in the average opening date of about 3 weeks since 1996. Mr. Speaker, the list goes on. These are facts. They are not convenient deals to excuse continued tax breaks for big polluters. They are not convenient ideals so that we can avoid talking about something we don't want to talk about. Unlike the Conservatives and the Liberals before them, New Democrats are committed to addressing climate change. We accept it as a fact, and we have a plan to take urgent and immediate action to avoid catastrophic climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions in order to keep global average temperature increase below a maximum of 2 degrees Celsius. We will put a price on carbon and establish hard emission caps for large industrial emitters. We will enact the Climate Change Accountability Act, which will put in legislation a framework for achieving the national target of 80% below 1990 emission levels by 2050. We will establish a permanent federal energy-efficient retrofit program to reduce residential energy use, cut GHG emissions and create jobs and save Canadians money. We will establish effective programs to help communities deal with the impacts of climate change in Canada. We will fulfill our international climate obligations. We will cut over $1.3 billion in annual subsidies to fossil fuel industries. We will restart federal investment in renewable energy, and we will create a Green Jobs Fund to support just employment transition to the new economy. And we will reinvest to give Canadian green tech researchers and developers a leading edge in the global market. We cannot saddle future generations with the health problems caused by the pollution of our air, water and soil, or the insecurity of a planet affected by floods, food shortages, population displacement, and border disputes. Science shows climate change is already causing many of these problems, and Canada is and will be affected. Environment Canada and the Minister himself admit that current actions by the Conservative government will only get Canada halfway to our already weakened target for greenhouse gas emissions. That target falls far short of the reductions Canada has committed to making in order to avoid catastrophic climate change. Canadians are united in concern about the impacts of climate change and support the development of renewable energy projects, including wind, geothermal, solar power and energy-efficient technologies, as well as long-term investments in public transit. This government claims to want to make Canada a clean energy superpower, but has in fact cut funding for climate change. The Commissioner for Environment and Sustainable Development, in his 2010 report, chastised the Conservative government and the Liberal government before it on its failure to develop a national plan to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And yet this government has failed to act in the face of mounting evidence and increasing concern from municipalities, the provinces and territories. And Mr. Speaker, let it be known that the Liberals' track record is no better. Although they signed and ratified the Kyoto Protocol, they did absolutely nothing to try to reduce our emissions until it was too late. In 1993, the Liberals promised to reduce greenhouse gases by 20% by 2005. They had instead allowed them to increase by over 30%. In 2005, the United Nations reported that Canada's pollution increased more than any other signatory to the Kyoto Protocol. The Federal Environment Commissioner said that even if the measures contained in the Liberal government's 2005 plan had been fully implemented, it is difficult to say whether the projected emission reductions would have been enough to meet their own Kyoto obligations. Quite simply, their plan was not up to the task of meeting the Kyoto obligations. Finally, and perhaps more tragically, Mr. Speaker, on October the 8th, 2009, Liberal and Conservative MPs formed a coalition in this House to defeat a motion by the New Democrats to return Bill C-311, the Climate Change Accountability Act, to the House for a vote prior to the Copenhagen Climate Conference that December. The NDP bill would have committed Canada to science-based greenhouse gas reduction targets and work to hold the government publicly accountable for action on this issue. Mr. Speaker, we can do better. We can have a greener Canada and a prosperous economy. We can fulfill our environmental obligations. We can be wise investors and we can be responsible global citizens. We can leave to our children and grandchildren an environment, a Canada and a world we are proud of. New Democrats condemn the lack of effective action by successive federal, Conservative and Liberal governments since 1998 to address emissions and meet our Kyoto commitments. And we call on this government to immediately table its federal climate change adaptation plan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.